Hello and welcome to the Lettings Triad, the podcast where we delve into the world of lettings through the eyes of the landlord, tenant and agent. In this episode, we discuss whether you should use an agent when renting out your property, the pros and cons, and where you should start. Hello and welcome to episode 1. To use or not to use an agent? That is the question. Now, to answer this question, you need to think about what you want to use the agent for, as this will establish what type of service you need and what involvement you're willing to have yourself in the whole process. There is the option of not using an agent at all. And while I understand some landlords choose this option for financial reasons, because ultimately it's going to be cheaper, it's not something I would recommend or choose myself as a landlord. But we'll talk about this option later on in the programme. So, what services do agents usually offer? There's two main services out there, which usually suit most landlords, and these are the fully managed option and the finder's fee option, also known as let only or tenant find. So for those money-conscious landlords out there, let's start with the lesser of the two options, which is the finder's fee. And well, what does it actually include and who is it tailored towards? What's going to be included is going to depend on the agent itself. Some include a lot for finder's fee, some don't, and there's probably an average out there of what is usually included. So if you start the process, then the main thing that's going to be included is your marketing. They've got access to Zoopla on the market, as well as their own website and social media. So they can reach a lot more people than you possibly can using one of the online platforms such as Open Rent. Again, we'll talk about that later on. So they've marketed your property. They've done it in all the big companies out there. And the next stage then is finding you a tenant. So the agent is going to conduct the viewings on your behalf. That is normal. If they're asking you to conduct the viewings, you need to say, well, hang on a minute, I thought that was your job. So as a whole, they will conduct the viewings on your behalf. They should pre-qualify the viewers, not to waste your time, their time, or the client's time. And hopefully they're going to find you a suitable tenant pending referencing. Okay, so this leads on to referencing, which again should be included. This is usually done using a third-party company. Some smaller agents can do it in-house to save a little bit of money. There's nothing wrong with that. I suppose they've got the tools to do so, but most use a third-party company, an independent, to get that result back. Okay, so after they've referenced the client, you should get a phone call from the agent just to advise you on the outcome. There's 3 possible outcomes usually, which is passed with flying colours, failed with flying colours, or you've got a conditional pass. Now, a conditional pass is a conversation where the agent will speak to you, because it's going to involve meeting the condition, whatever that might be. It might be that they need to have a guarantor, they might need to lower their rent share and the other tenant's rent share increase because they can't afford an example. But that's a topic for another day, which we will cover, and it's a conversation that the agent will give you. All right. So once they've passed that referencing, another part of what should be included is to create the occupier's contract. Now, your agent, as part of the service, will create the contract for signing. Okay. Now, the new occupier's contract, again, we will cover this in future episodes, is pretty robust. You can add certain things with the authorization of the tenant, but try not to bombard your agent with, can you add this clause and that clause, because sometimes it can't be done. Okay, so depending on whatever agent you choose and what's included in their terms of business, which you would have already signed at this point, they can also sign this contract on your behalf, which is good. It speeds up the process. You don't need to be there as long as you're happy that the tenants have passed referencing and you're happy to continue. The agent can do that on your behalf, and then they can send it to the contract holder for them to sign, and they can speed up the process rather than you do it. Okay. After that, the tenants move into the property, and as part of the process, then the agent should ask the tenants to visit the office to meet them, or they can meet them at the property, physically hand over the keys once the bond and the rent and the contract has been signed, and that's the process usually done for finder's fee. You're then on your own. Just to recap then, what's usually included and should be included in my opinion is the marketing, the agent will find you a tenant, the referencing, to create the occupier's contract, collect the move-in monies, which is the rent and the bond, and then to physically move the tenant in by giving the keys and signing the contract. All right, so that's pretty much what should be included. I've mentioned what is included, and obviously there's an opposite to everything. So I'll start off with the bond. So, we've taken, or the agent has taken the bond, but they're not going to do anything with it other than send it to you. So it is up to you to register the bond within 30 days of the bond being paid, okay? And this must be paid into a government-approved bond scheme. There's a few out there. Again, we will cover this in great detail in future episodes. But just to give you an example, you've got the TDS, which is the Tenancy Deposit Scheme. You've got the DPS, and you've got My Deposits. All right, so the bond will be coming to you, and it is up to you. It is your responsibility to get that bond registered and to get that prescribed information out to your tenants as quickly as possible. All right, so they've moved in, everything's going great, but nobody's visiting the property because that's not included. So you're going to need to source externally or do it yourself, the routine inspections. Okay, just be mindful that this is actually a license requirement for finder's fee landlords, self-managing landlords, and it's best practice and something you will need to arrange and complete at least once a year. All right, so that is a license requirement, so just bear that in mind. Something as simple as a routine inspection is a license requirement. Another part that's not included is to create an inventory. Now, this again is a requirement and something you should take seriously. Now, the inventory should be as detailed as possible, as without one, there is almost no point in taking a bond. Just let that sink in a minute. You've taken a bond of whatever amount, expecting to use that at the end. There are some sort of damages or more than fair wear and tear, but you've got no evidence of what it was like before to what it is now. So if it did ever go to adjudication, there's no way that the adjudication company, TDS, DPS, My Deposits, whoever you choose, is going to know what it was like before compared to what it is now. So the likelihood of awarding money is quite slim. This is really, really important. You will need an inventory. Another thing that's not included is certificates. It's going to be your responsibility to make sure that all the certificates, including your gas, your electric, for example, are in date, and you're going to need to arrange access for their renewal as and when they expire. Gas is every year, as you should know, and the EICR, the electrical report, can be anything from every tenancy to 3 years to 5 years. It's not going to be any more than 5 years, and if it is, you do it as 5 years anyway. Because that leads us on to notices. Without the correct documentation in place and up to date, again, your notices are going to be somewhat invalid. So, if you require your property back, or if you want to increase the rent, for example, or if the tenants are in arrears, you are going to be responsible for serving the right notice and making sure it's completed correctly. If it's not completed correctly, or if any of the paperwork, as we mentioned earlier, is out of date, this could invalidate the notice completely. So you've gone through the tenancy, or the occupational contract really well. Everything's gone smoothly. The tenants have moved out. And another thing that obviously your agent's not going to cover on a finder's fee is the final inspection. This goes hand in hand with your inventory. So that's why it's important that you get one of them done. So you're going to need to conduct your own final inspection at the end of the tenancy in order to deduct any money from the bond should there be any damages or cleaning needed. Now, you're going to need to complete the inspection and negotiate your findings with your tenant. The last one that's definitely not included is point of contact. You are going to be the main point of contact for your tenant throughout and at the end of the tenancy. This does extend past the tenancy, especially if your tenant would like a reference to move on, for example. Again, that is your responsibility. Now, when I say point of contact, that can be anything from advice, maintenance issues for sure. They're definitely going to call you for that. It could be to add a tenant onto the contract. It could be to kind of have pets, for example. So all these different scenarios, you are going to be the point of contact for. So it is important that you keep up with law and legislation in order to give your tenants the advice that they need. All right. Another point, actually, which I just going back to the inventory, which is something that managed agents do, or some at least, is update utilities. So they usually update the gas, the electric, and the water, for example, and the council tax. And the water is actually a legal requirement. All right. So bear that in mind. You know, you're a finder's fee landlord. They've just moved in. You've read the meters, but make sure you update Welsh Water or wherever your water provider is with the tenant's details. This is a legal requirement, and you have to do it. Okay, so make sure you put that on your check sheet. So there you have it. What's not included? So it's quite a lot there. Actually, it's quite a lot that's going to take up your time in terms of the reports. So let's just recap quickly as a bullet point form. What's not included, there might be more depending on the agent that you use. It could be some from the what is included into the what's not included. So that's up to you to find out. But as a rule, what's not included is the registering of the bond, routine inspections, creating the inventory for you, keeping an eye on the certificates, issuing notices, definitely the final inspection, being the point of contact, and of course, updating utilities. Okay, if you are a finder's fee landlord who are comfy doing everything that we've just mentioned there, and you're looking to save a little bit of money, then that could be for you. All right, we'll discuss that later on. So let's see what's in the fully managed. So let's have a look what's usually included with fully managed. Again, this is going to depend on what agent you use. Okay, different agents offer different things, and I can't go through them all because they're pretty much all different, but the core of what they include in fully managed is usually the same. All right, so again, going back to the finder's fee, it's going to include the marketing. All right, and this is going to be exactly the same as the finder's fee option. So I'm not going to run through that again, but again, it's going to be on the usual large platforms which you have not got access to. So if nothing else, it's worth using an agent to find a tenant because they've got access to those large online portals to get your property out there looking the best it can with professional photographs. They're going to find you a tenant, like before, no change there. They're going to deal with the referencing in the exact same way. They're going to create the occupier's contract as per normal, and included in their terms of business, it should be a little paragraph or line there to say that they can sign that on your behalf, which is something they are going to do to speed up the process. Okay, they're going to collect in the move-in money and including the bond. All right, well, we'll go into that in a second, and they're going to physically move the tenants in. All right, so that is exactly the same as what the finder's fee is. And then The next part is what the finder's fee doesn't include, is your management is going to include. Okay, so they're going to update the utility companies on your behalf with the meter readings. So they've ticked a box, council tax, electric and gas, 100% water, because that is the legal requirement. They are going to be updated with not only the tenant's information, but with up-to-date meter readings. They're going to register the bond on your behalf using their chosen approved government bond scheme. That is taking that out of the equation, giving you peace of mind that the bond is registered for future needs. So they're going to also be the point of contact, so you're not going to get any phone calls for maintenance or issues or for advice. The agent is going to do that on your behalf, and some agents even offer an out-of-hours service where they get a dedicated mobile number, for example, to an approved contractor, or 3 of them, for example, a gas, plumber and electric, who can be contacted out of hours should there be an emergency. So that's peace of mind for your tenant, where they can get hold of somebody, maybe not the agent directly, but anyone for maintenance requirements or needs out of hours. They are going to be arranging the maintenance for you. Again, you don't need to have the plumber, the electrician, the roofer, the gardener, the carpenter in your phone book. The agent is going to have them in their own phone book, and they will be arranging maintenance for you. They're going to carry out routine inspections, but they're not only going to do it once a year, some might, by the way, but the ones that I've been looking into, and as I said, I'm a landlord myself, I usually get mine done every 3 to 4 months as part of the service, which I think is fantastic. Now, you might think, oh, well, what's the point? Well, the point is you are able to see inside of your property to see if your tenants are looking after it. But the biggest thing for me is if the tenant, which is their legal obligation to report maintenance, don't, I can see it through the eye of the agent. I can see that there might be a maintenance issue, and I can instruct the agent without the tenant even getting involved if need be, or at least telling me about it, to get it done before it gets worse. So your agent should be doing routine inspections once a year is a requirement, but it could be every 6 months, 4 months, or 3 months, like I just said. So they're going to include the final inspection. Okay, this is going to go in line or run alongside your inventory for all the reasons I mentioned on the finder's fee. All you need to do is tell the agent what deductions you would like. The agent will advise on whether that is doable, whether that's in line with the TDS, DPS, My Deposit guidelines. And once we've decided on a figure, we will put that to the tenant, and we will put that to arbitration should you need to. Okay, I say we, as in the agent or whoever you will choose. So that's usually included as well. Okay, so again, everything the finder's fee doesn't include, the manage will include. Okay, and other things that, again, we haven't spoken about because there's a lot that could be included is updates. Your agent will update you. It's their job. So throughout the tenancy, throughout the year, throughout your time with an agent, you'd get multiple updates, industry updates, legal changes, legislation changes. Not that you're going to need to act on them. Sometimes you will, in relation to the smoke alarms, for example. You'd have to fund that. But we are making you aware of it. So in theory, your property and your tenancy occupational contract is compliant at all times. Another thing that agents will do throughout the year or throughout your contract is rent reviews. They're going to look at your rent on a 12 monthly basis, because you can only put it up every 12 months. And they're going to think, well, hang on, that is below market value, for example. That could do with, I don't know, 25, 50, 75 pound per month. And they're going to recommend that to you. If you agree with that, you don't have to. If you've got a good tenant, you're happy to keep them where they are at the price they pay, that's fine. But if you want to increase it, your agent then will issue the correct RHW notice to get that rent increased. The agent overall, apart from what is included as a bullet point, which we've just gone through, they are also going to keep ongoing communications with you to make sure that you are getting the best out of your investment and that the tenants are looking after your investment the best they can. So there's more to the what's included. It's more of a nurturing exercise, hold in hand exercise, and a great communication process moving forward. So there is a lot involved with Fully Managed. You could practically hand your property over, and hopefully, if you never hear from your agent again, they're doing a fantastic job because everything's running smoothly, apart from, obviously increasing the rent, for example. So all in all, there's a lot involved. And of course, the biggest thing with that is you've got to pay for it. So what is the cost differences for each of the options? This is an average. In fact, it's not even an average. It's just what is out there. I've done some research on a few companies, but finder's fee is usually a one-off setting up cost, and it can range from a set fee to a percentage of the first month's rent. Now, the cost is going to depend on what is included and what company you choose. Obviously, the more that's included, you might find that initial setup cost being a little bit more. And if it's just the bare bones, it could be less. Smaller independent agents might charge you less, but there might be less included. Okay, so you're going to need to check. Fully Managed then is usually a percentage of the monthly rent plus a setting up cost at the start of the occupation contract. The percentage will depend on what is included and what company you use, which is obvious. You can expect to pay around anything between 8% to 15%. Has not included VAT. Some companies do charge VAT. However, the higher amount usually includes a little bit more and some extras, which you would normally have to pay for separately with some of the lower amounts. So it's always worth checking and double checking to see what is included with your monthly fee. The lower fee offered isn't always the best option, as some agents might charge more to serve a notice. For example, increase the rent, to do an inventory, a final inspection. So you need to double check. So when you add up all the extras, which ultimately you're going to need, you might find that percentage does creep up overall over the whole year, and you might be 1% off or 2% off or even the same as the higher charging agent. So sometimes it's not always best to look for the lower monthly option, as there are usually or can be extras to bump that up. Again, have a look at what they include. Okay, so we've had a couple of questions in from some landlords. If you do have any questions, please email us and we will get them read out on the show. So what questions have we got today? Number one, do I need to use an agent to market my property? Well, in short, no. No, you don't. You can use third-party portals such as Open Rent, for example. You can even use Facebook, Gumtree to advertise your property. Now, it is your responsibility to make sure you and the property are compliant before going to market. This is really important. So you and the property are going to have to be registered with RentSmart Wales to get your property on the market. That is a blanket rule. That's not just because you're finder's fee or you don't want to use an agent. It is for everyone. So every landlord out there, every single one of you listening, you are going to need a RentSmart Wales account with a big tick next to, is this property is a rental property in Wales? Yes. And you as the landlord need to be registered. That is the law. Okay, so don't try and sneak around it by going on Open Rent. You need to be registered. If you're self-managing, i.e. finder's fee, or Tenant Find, or you don't want to use an agent at all, you're going to have to be licensed as well. Okay, so make sure you get your course done, you pass your little test, and then you can apply for your license. Other things is the property is going to have to need a valid EPC rated an E or above. If you do nothing else before you go to market, if you're thinking of not using an agent, you need to make sure that you've got an EPC and also that you are registered. Those two are fundamentals. You cannot market your property without them. So, to answer your question, yes, you can. Okay, question 2. This is an interesting one because there's a yes or no answer here. So if I have a troubled tenant and I'm currently self-managing, can I get an agent to take over management? Well, yes, in short, of course you can. Agents take on managed properties every day. The ones they take on, though, are usually running smoothly. There's no arrears, there's no maintenance issues, there's no ongoing problems, because what agent is going to want to inherit a problem? Because it's going to become a right pain. All right, so if that tenant is a pain for you, they're going to be a pain for the agent. Now, whether you tell the agent that or not is entirely up to you, but they're going to find out if there are multiple maintenance issues, for example, and they're also going to find out if there are arrears, because they're not going to take that on unless they do the due diligence. So, yeah, in theory, you can hand over your property to an agent mid-tenancy, mid-term, year 1, year 2, but it's whether or not they're going to want to take that on if there are any problems. The other side to that is there are no problems, it's just that you've had enough. You're looking to emigrate abroad, or you're retired, you just want to enjoy your life. An agent is more than happy to take on your property as a managed property. They'd be more than happy to help there. So give them a ring, find out what the terms of business are, find out what the fees are, get a good relationship with that agent. You need to feel comfy, and they will come out, meet the tenant, meet you, have a look around the property like they would on a normal valuation, and you can go from there. So yes, they can take it on. They will love to take it on if it is a plain sailing tenancy, but if there are any problems, they will find them out, and the likelihood is they're not going to want to inherit a problem. Another question here is, I've got a property which I'm thinking of self-managing. However, I'm a little bit nervous as this is my first time. Can I use an agent in the short term, and can I change to self-managing in the future? Well, again, the answer to that is yes, you can. A lot of agents out there will hold your hand, they'll guide you, they'll walk you through the process, and you can go managed for the first 6, 12 months, whatever you've agreed. It's usually 6 months or for the term of the contract, and then you've got to give a sort of get out notice to fly solo. So yes, you can do it. It might mean that you have to go for 6 months initially, then you might have to give, 2 to 3 months as a notice period to your agent, and then you can fly solo. Especially if you're on the fence, actually. If you're on the fence and you say to the agent, I really want to go self-manage for financial reasons, but I'm a little bit scared, what do I do? The agent might even recommend, let's go fully managed for 6 months. And if all is plain sailing, you don't even have to give notice. We'll take your notice from month 3, for example, allowing you to fly solo then on month 6. So another question here is, do I need to be licensed to self-manage? Well, we've already covered this further up the page. So yes, you do. You're going to have to take, or if you partake in any management activities yourself, you're going to need to be licensed with Rent Smart Wales. Now, to obtain your license, you will need to take a short online course and pass a short test. Now, if you've passed the test, then you'll be able to apply for your license, which lasts 5 years. So, in short, yes, on all occasions, you've got to be registered, and if you are self-managing, you have to be licensed. The license courses can be done via the Rent Smart Wales website, I believe, and there's also other companies out there offering online alternatives which are accredited by Rent Smart Wales, so pop them in the search engine and have a quick look for yourself. But yes, in short, you have to be licensed. So there you have it, a few points of what's included and what's not included in your finder's fee option, and of course what's included with fully managed and what you're going to need to do. What you choose is entirely up to you, both in involvement and financially. All I will say is sometimes the lower option or the lower percentage isn't always the best, and sometimes saving a little bit of money by going finder's fee again isn't the right option if keeping up with law and legislation is not for you. It might seem good on paper and it might look even better on your bank statement, but it could cost you a lot more down the line. So what you choose is entirely up to you, but log in, keep up to date with the Lettings Triad, as we will give you help and advice and keep you up to date with new laws and legislation to help you choose whatever option suits you. Until next time, cheerio.